It's me. And I woke up this morning and I saw that I had 900 subscribers. So hi. Hi, all 900 of you. Thank you for being here. I'm Queen Elset Haru, as you probably know by now, and I have another exciting edition of Ask An Aquarius. Okay, so yesterday I was talking about relationships, and I was saying how I don't know if I've ever been with anybody before. I don't know. And somebody said, "What do you mean? You've been married? You've dated males, females? Like, what do you mean?" And I don't feel like I've ever been with anybody. And I'm gonna tell you guys why. This is a very Aquarius thing, and some of you may feel this way too. I've always been open to a commitment. Aquarius are very romantic minded. A lot of times we're into romance. Some very cliche romance, actually. I love The Notebook. I love Titanic, and some Aquarius are not as cliche with it, but some of us are very into romance. Flowers, candy, traditional forms of romance, usually. Some of us are not, but a great deal of us are into romance. So I've always been open to romance. I've always been open to love. I've always been open to making a commitment. The problem is that I have never found someone that I really wanted to make a commitment to. So I've always been with them, but not been with them. Even when I was married, I had one foot in the door and one foot out the door. It's like, as soon as you do something I don't like, I'm heading for the hills. And that's how it's always been. It's been like that since I first started dating. And I realized that recently, right now I'm doing a lot of work on myself emotionally as far as romance is concerned. I'm doing a lot of law of attraction work. I'm taking this soulmate course that I got from dailyom.com. They have a bunch of courses, and I'm taking their soulmate course, one of their soulmate courses. And it's all about opening yourself up and getting ready to receive someone and looking at the mistakes that you've made in the past and changing them and, opening your heart and those kind of things. And one of the things I learned from that is that I never committed to anybody. Even people I told I was committed to, I wasn't really committed to. Even people who I wanted to be committed to, I was never committed to. It's like it was always something wrong. Either they didn't want to commit, or I didn't want to commit, or I was committed but they weren't committed. It was always something wrong. And even with my commitments were always wavering. It was never truly a commitment. If you got one foot in the door and one foot out the door, you're not truly committed. Basically, what I'm saying to myself in my own mind is, I'm here until they piss me off. I'm here until they get on my nerves. I'm here until something better comes along. Quite frankly, those were all the things I was thinking. Even though at the time, I thought I was in love or in or in this or in that. But it was never permanent. It was always temporary, even in my mind. So when I look back on my relationships, I'm like, if I never really committed to anyone, I don't feel like I was ever really in a relationship. I feel like I was in a series of situationships that went wrong in some cases. And, I dated a lot. I've had a lot of suitors. Woo, Lord. I've had a lot of suitors, and I've dated a lot. I've talked to some people, how we talk back and forth on text, and we call it talking, in the hood. We talking. I've done some of that, a lot of that. But like I said before, it was always never anybody that I really connected with. See, I've always believed in that soulmate, that whatever you want to call soulmate, life partner. One time I was doing a reading for somebody, and she wanted to argue with me about the definition of soulmate. And I'm like, girl, we only got an hour for this reading. You better stop arguing with me about definitions. It's whatever you want to call them. Soulmate, life partner. Some people call them a twin flame. Some people say, my better half. You got so many names for it. Well, just pick one. And basically, I've always believed that we all have one, at least one. I think you have several, actually, and you end up meeting one of them. Potentially. You might meet one of them. But I've always believed that we have another person, another half to us, and I believe that some of us are healthy enough to attract them and some of us are not. And I didn't realize that back in the day, but I realize that now. So, I've never drawn that person. I've never come across that person. I've never found that person. I always thought I did for a second. Maybe I wanted it to be, but it never was it. So eventually, every time I left, every time I was done, I left. And out of all those times, it was only one time that I really, truly felt something deeply enough that it really touched me. And that was the situation I told you guys about with Voldemort. Everything else I experienced really didn't touch me like that. At the time it did. The time it was very serious. The time it was very serious. But when it was over, I was just like, just kind of blew off into the stratosphere. So one of the things I notice about Aquarius is that we do have this issue with commitment. And it's not that the Aquarius will not commit. It's that the Aquarius is waiting for something special to commit to. And in the meantime, we run into a number of situationships that we feel are good enough for right now. But we never really articulate this to the other person. And some of us really don't even understand that that's what we're doing. And there were times when I didn't get that. I get that now because now I'm very self-aware. I've been through workshops and therapies and classes and, for years and years and years and years now. So now I'm very self-aware. I've analyzed myself from every direction, backwards and forwards. So now I know what I was doing. I know what was going on now, but at the time I didn't. So to me, honestly, I've never been with anybody. And I like that. I do. I like that. I like that realization because it means that the person that I do marry eventually is going to be my life partner. It's going to be my first, life partner, the first person that I ever really committed to, regardless of, whatever happened in the past. So I like that. I like that energy. So like the people that I have spent time with or whatever the case was in the past, I'm just going to from now on call them situationships. I'm not even going to call people my exes no more because as far as I'm concerned, we was never together, and just looking back on it, we never were, because if I was never really committed and they were only committed to whatever level they were committed to, I can't really speak for them. But I can speak for myself and say I had one foot in and one foot out. So being as though that's the way my energy was, and I don't know where the heck they were, then I'll just have to say that I was in a series of situationships as far as I'm concerned. And like I said before with Aquarius, people get very upset about that. I've had a lot of people ask me about that. I've had a lot of people from other signs say, well, how do I get my Aquarius to commit? You don't. You really don't. And Aquarius will commit when they feel like the situation is right. When they feel like the person is their other half. When we feel like the person is our twin flame, our soulmate, or whatever. Aquarius will commit. Some Aquarius are married and have been married forever. But we have to feel that connection. And if we don't feel that connection, like in my case, we'll make a temporary agreement to hang around for a little while. And the whole time, we're not planning on staying. So I had a woman who came to me recently, and she was talking about this Aquarius guy, and she was saying that he comes and goes. And the first thing that came to my mind was, this is temporary for him. There's something about this situation that he does not want to commit to. So if you're having a situation with an Aquarius like that, there's something about the situation that they don't want to commit to, and they're going back and forth about it. Because they know that they shouldn't commit to it because they know the situation really, you're not their other half. They can feel it. But there are some perks that they're getting from it. They are enjoying some things about it. They might not want to be alone. So they keep on going back and forth. The Aquarius ebbs and flows constantly. So when they're lonely, they're, those kind of things. So they go back and forth. So if you're in a situation with an Aquarius and this is what they're doing, seriously, it would behoove you to move on because they really don't want you. Seriously, they don't. They really don't want you. They're hanging in there, but they know deep down inside that this relationship is not the one. You're not the one. And they know it. But they are lacking the integrity to just be honest with you, be honest with themselves, and move on. So if you find yourself in this situation with an Aquarius, you be the person, the smarter person in the situation, and just go ahead and move on. Now, some people I've talked to, they've hung in there with Aquarius and they've gone through this situation with them, the back and forth, the back and forth, the back and forth. And some of them have eventually come to a space where the person is with them. I worry about that though. Some of the times I think it's probably a good thing. Maybe the Aquarius realized over time that this was the person for them and they didn't recognize it at first. I'm sure that happens sometimes. But in other times, I think the Aquarius just decided to settle for them because they had been together so long. They didn't want to start over. You know, Aquarius has a way of just saying, you know, F it. You know, I'll just deal with it. The problem is that it doesn't always last. And they're not always going to be faithful to the situation. I wasn't faithful to anybody. I wasn't faithful until I stopped seeing men. Then I started being faithful. And that was only because of the fact, when I was with men, and I think I've told y'all this before, when I used to date men, I always assumed that they were cheating. I always assumed that we were not exclusive, even if they were telling me that we were, because they always say that you are. But I never assumed that. I never believed them, because it seemed to me that men always have their options open. It seemed to me that men are always seeing other women. You know, if you have, 10 women for every man, I'm like, yeah, right, they're going to be faithful. I just never believed it. So since I never believed it, I never was faithful to them, because I didn't think it was fair. I didn't think it was fair for me to be faithful while they're not being faithful. So I'm definitely not going to do that, And then I started to be faithful when I started to see women exclusively, because I felt like, I guess I kind of sympathized more with them and felt like, well, they're like me. So they're probably, more likely to be faithful. Right, wrong, or indifferent. That was my logic, And so I was faithful to these people and still wasn't committed. Faithful, but still not committed. Just like I said, there for the time being. And the reason how come this happens, I think, is because of logic. The Aquarius cannot logically reconcile committing to a situation that we're uncertain about. And we're typically uncertain about our feelings. So if you're uncertain about your feelings, you're going to be uncertain about the situation that you're in that's causing the feelings. We have to really work with ourselves and get ourselves together as far as feelings and emotions is concerned. So that is what happened with me and my commitments. I've been in a series of situationships that I'm now realizing were never real. Were never real for whatever reason. And I just wasted a bunch of time. I wasted a bunch of time and energy. And I think a lot of us do this. I think a lot of us have been in this situation. I think back and I'm like, okay, this one was my boyfriend. This one was my girlfriend. This one was my fiance. I can't even think. I think I've been engaged several times now that I think about it. I'm thinking about the rings. I'm remembering different rings. So I'm just like, oh my God. But none of these situations was I ever really committed to. It was always for the time being. It was always temporary. I always knew that once they upset me enough, I was out. Or once I wasn't happy, I was out. Or if something better came along, I was out. Or if I liked somebody more, I was out. And that's the way it was every single time. So now I'm realizing that's not really a commitment at all. Even when I got married, I was like, well, if I don't like him, I can divorce him. And that's not a commitment at all. So now looking back on my life and, realizing these things as a grown woman, I'm like, I'm not going to do that anymore. That's why I've been single all this time. Like, I was talking about being single in another video and the person was like, oh, you sound like you're advertising. No, I'm not advertising. I'm just telling the truth. I'm just talking about what is, I'm not advertising anything because I don't have to fight and struggle to get a date. I can go stand outside right now and I'll have 2 by the time I come back in. It's just how my energy is. It's always been like that. I've never had a hard time finding somebody to be interested in me or getting a date or somebody liking me. That's always been the easy part. The hard part is finding somebody that I want to commit to more than 15 minutes. So that's all about me. You know, that's all about me and what I have going on. So at this point in my life, I'm working on that. So that's why I said in yesterday's video that I don't feel like I've ever really been with anybody. I don't feel like I've ever really been in a relationship because I've never really been committed to anything but myself and my child and my humanitarian pursuits. You know, the way that I commit to Goddess, the way that I commit to the things I want to do, I've never been committed to a person like that. Even though I've had emotion for a person, I've had feelings for a person, you know, but I've never committed in that same way. So that's what I was talking about. And that's okay. From now on, I'm going to say that I have been in situationships. Something could be, I guess it could be an ex situationship, I guess we'll call it. But I'm not going to give them the validation of calling them relationships anymore because they really weren't, not for me or the other person. The other persons, I don't know. In some cases, maybe they were a little further along than I was. Maybe they weren't. I don't know. Because when I look back on relationships, I look back and I see so many games. I see so many lies. I see so many, you know, unconscious behaviors, you know. And I just don't think that that's a relationship. I don't think two unconscious people halfway committing to each other or not at all. You know, I had one case, we weren't committed at all. As a matter of fact, when I met Voldemort, we were both seeing, I was living with a woman and he was living with a woman when I first met Voldemort. So, it is what it is. Deuces.